Welcome inside Black and Gold. Steve Geller along with Jeff Nowak, your Week 5 edition 2-2 Saints, getting ready to take on the 1-3 New England Patriots. It was a rough go last Sunday at home. As we all know, the team just unable to get into the end zone has been the biggest problem. Trying to get points, scoring points, the name of the game in football. This team has had troubles doing. A little bit banged up, came out of the game, I guess, as good as you hope they could end up, Jeff, after, getting throttled on the field by Tampa Bay. Wasn't as bad in the injury front.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go through some of the injuries, updates on Paulson Adebo, Cesar Ruiz. We're going to get the initial injury report on Wednesday, so we're going to kind of preview that. We're not going to have an episode on Wednesday, so we're going to go into that today and get to anything from the injury report in our Friday episode. We're also going to go through film notes in the second segment, and then in the final segment, I want to kind of reset where the Saints are in terms of their upcoming schedule, because a lot of there's surprises, right? Like, I didn't expect Houston to be competitive, and I expected the Patriots to be more competitive, although they have been competitive. It's tough. So we'll get into that. But yeah, let's go back. I kind of ranted a lot about the offensive line and my frustrations about why James Hurst constantly has to hop across the line when, we've seen the Saints in the past, and that's one of the reasons you have Isaac Yiadom on the outside, right? Because you only want to have to change one position when somebody leaves. But 2 weeks in a row now, you've had to bring in a backup offensive lineman, and James Hurst has had to move. So you not only have a backup in, you have someone changing midstream. That's not good. But so Andres Pete is out, or Andres Pete went out with a concussion. Cesar Ruiz, it sounds like, is going to get back this week to practice. That's what Dennis Allen told us yesterday on the WWL Saints coaches show. Paulson Adebo is also expected to be back to practice on Wednesday. So those are two positive developments. The other guys we're going to be watching for, Juwan Johnson. He went out right in the pregame, right before the game started, which is obviously
while he was juggling.
I don't know. I don't think the juggling is what got him, but yeah, he was there warming up, and then all of a sudden I saw him stretching out his calf during the national anthem and during introductions, and that's not a great sign. So that's going to be one to watch. He dealt with a calf injury early in camp, so that's nothing necessarily new. But for a guy who has struggled to produce to this point, now missing a game with an injury, it's just very frustrating for a guy that I had high expectations for. Beyond that, you're talking about Lonnie Johnson, Jordan Howden, both of whom are dealing with injuries. Lonnie Johnson left with a hamstring injury and did not return. Jordan Howden has a finger injury that he was wearing a brace over it. So, to me, that kind of reads that he had a procedure and it was not going to be good for him to play with it last week. So hopefully that's a 1 week thing. Hopefully he can just brace, cover it and play, because you're still without Marcus May for one more week. Right. He'll be back in week 6. But I think that's it. I think that's all on the injury front. And so, that's the frustrating thing, is you can't really point to injuries as the culprit for why you've been bad, other than maybe Derek Carr's shoulder.
And I will say, Dennis Allen did say his regimen will pretty much stay the same this week, Carr's regimen. So it'll be interesting to see. I guess I'm expecting him to be limited tomorrow at practice.
Yeah, I mean, I actually would expect him not to participate
at all.
Yeah, I expect him to be a DMP, because Wednesday is your lighter practice, right? It's usually kind of your install day for the upcoming week. And then so Thursday and Friday are when I think you'd want to see him throwing. Because it just makes sense. Like, it's like, why would you, if you are a little bit worried about the recovery timeline, why would you not just give him that extra day? So, maybe Derek Carr will be out there, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him taking the day. And he'll be out there, but maybe not, maybe limited and not throwing a full allotment. But
he'll be drinking smoothies with Ramczyk.
Say that again.
He'll be drinking smoothies with Ramczyk.
I think Jimmy Graham and Ramczyk will be out there. I think this program they're on is a Wednesday rest day every other week. I think that's how it's developed out through the training camp. So I think they won't get that day off. So he'll be drinking smoothies alone. But DA said that he was sore on Monday, but he wasn't as sore as he was the Monday before. So that's a good sign. I don't think he's going to miss a game. It's funny because it's like, well, if you didn't miss last week, he's definitely not going to miss this week. So yeah, it's honestly frustrating because I wish you could be like, well, this team is just being hamstrung by injuries. Like I watched the Giants play last night and was like, well, they don't have their left tackle. Saquon's not out there. The offensive line is in shambles, and Daniel Jones is getting sacked 9 times. So would they be better with Andrew Thomas? Yes. The Saints really don't have that excuse. They're missing a couple players, but you have to bake in some absences. Like no NFL team is completely healthy every week. So yeah, I think the Saints team just needs to play better. That's the only thing about it.
Yeah, what was disappointing too for me in the game with Tampa Bay was like, yay, the big star, the shiny offensive weapon, the leader of that offense. You could consider an Alvin Kamara, and while they got him enough touches, I didn't have a problem with that. It just wasn't able to really get any yards after catch.
No, one thing that was, DA did bring up on the coaches show yesterday that, it's not like people, I tweeted this and people were like, wow, he's just trying to sugarcoat what happened. And it's like, no, it's just detail, right? It's context for a weird stat line. So he had 13 catches in that game. Now, not all catches are created equally, right? One thing the Saints have started doing is these little pop passes, which you've seen in college for years, and they've started to filter up to the NFL the last few years. And so 2 of those receptions were actually pop passes where Kamara came in motion and you just kind of like pop the ball up and he takes it. That's a forward pass. So if it hits the ground, it's an incompletion, right? But that's technically a reception. And those 2 plays netted negative 13 yards.
That hurts.
So, yeah, I mean, it's like either way, it's a bad play. It's not absolving anything in terms of the play calling. It was a bad idea, and, we'll talk a little bit more about it. But from a statistical perspective, it makes it seem like how do you catch 13 passes and only go 33 yards forward? That does not make sense. In reality, it was more like 11 receptions for 46 yards and 13 carries for 38 yards, right? So from a statistical perspective, it's just kind of funny because it's like, yeah, the reception total feels really weird, but that's contributing to it. It doesn't make the plays any better. It's just I thought it was interesting because I didn't even think about that in real time. And then it's like, well, yeah, that's how you get a couple extra because I don't remember him catching 13 passes. I was like, when did that happen? Well, 2 of them were there.
Yeah, the overall outcome, whether it was pass, handoff, none of it was working, unfortunately. And man, oh man, I don't know. I'm curious and I think everybody is frustrated with the offense, play calling, personnel use. You see Kendra Miller even just 1 carry, that's it, just 1 carry for the guy.
I was frustrated with Jimmy Graham's usage.
That's another one.
Like I know, like Juwan Johnson going out was a challenge because
Yeah.
it's not like you could plan for it. That's the thing. When you have a guy go out right before the game, it's like you have a game plan in place, and he's a big part of it. And suddenly, a lot of that goes out the window, and it's like, what does Jimmy know? What is Jimmy ready to do? Right? Like, what has he been repping all week? And so it limits where you can put him, or it limits what you can do. But at the same time, like there was a 3rd down play where they called a shot play and it wasn't there. Rashid Shaheed wasn't open, and Jimmy was not wide open, but he had leverage on the guy in trail. And it's like when Jimmy is not being fronted by somebody, you should be able to just loft it out in front of him and let him go get it. And it's like a 3rd and 4 near midfield. And it's like, you don't have to throw that deep ball. Like Rashid's not open. Just give the 6'7" guy a chance to get a first down. Anyway, that's what frustrates me. But, Dennis Allen was asked this week, and this is going to be the rest of the time we talk about this in this segment. Dennis Allen was asked this week if he would consider making coaching changes, making play caller changes. And this is what he said.
Will you consider any coaching or personnel changes?
No, we won't make any coaching changes. I don't think I've never seen that to be the the right answer, particularly when you're 4 games into the season. And yet, we have to be better. And I understand everybody's frustration, and believe me, everybody in this building's frustrated with it, because we have to find ways to put more points on the board.
He was also asked, is this a point where, drastic decisions would be a little much? And he said, again, 4 games into the season, I don't think anything is drastic. I think that'd be ridiculous. And we have to, and yet we have to be better. And that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I don't think if you were paying, DA wasn't going to change the play caller after week 4. You're not doing anything like that. But it is something you have to look at, and I think they are aware of that. He also said Pete Carmichael is well aware of the target that's been put on his back in that regard. And is it all fair? No, there was a lot of problems in this game that go well beyond Pete Carmichael. But it's not unfair. It's not completely unmerited either. Like, there's things that need to be fixed with this offense.
Well, I think this.
Yeah.
Every time Pete Carmichael gets brought up, I think of that. But to me, Jeff, unfortunately, through 4 games now, thank goodness we're 2-2. But man, this offense is looking very similar to what we were seeing last year with Andy Dalton running the show. I have not really seen an upgrade in anything yet.
Yeah, I mean, 15 of Derek Carr's 23 completions, and 2 of which were the pop passes to Alvin Kamara, were at or behind the line of scrimmage. He had 17 attempts at or behind the line of scrimmage in this game. In weeks 1 through 3, which is only 10 quarters because he didn't play the second half against the Packers, he had 16 total. So he threw more pass attempts at or behind the line of scrimmage in this game than he did in the first 3 games of the season. And so, it is funny because you look at it and you're like, I did want him to throw more passes at the line of scrimmage. I did want him to check down a little bit more. Like, I did want him to get the ball in Alvin Kamara's hands, but it's like too much,
Right.
It's like, can't we, is there a medium here that we can reach? And it's, yeah, but I one of the things when you look at the Saints offense and the Saints staff, it's like, I think Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael are kind of a package deal in this regard. Like, I don't think I think there's a scenario where at the end of this season, you're moving on from a head coach and an offensive coordinator, but I don't think the solution exists where you just get rid of one of those guys and reset the deck with everything else in place. Right. And I think that's kind of like, if this is the group that you are either going to succeed or fail with. If you look around and you look at teams that have fired offensive coordinators in midseason, things typically don't get better. So I think like the way Dennis Allen is looking at it, and I kind of agree, is, no, it's a pass fail class, guys. Like, you're, if you're changing coaches in midstream with that idea, unless they've lost the locker room or there's infighting for whatever reason, like, you're punting on the season. Like, that's kind of what you're doing. Like, you're not expecting it to get better immediately. And so I agree with that. Like, the guys in the room have to get better. And can they? That's a good question. I don't know. But I don't think this team is going to be the team that fires a coordinator midseason. I just don't.
Yeah, and to me, some folks calling for, they should promote Joe Woods to be the play caller. Well, isn't really Ronald Curry to be the play caller. Isn't he technically a disciple, you would say, of Pete Carmichael then?
Yeah, right. Like, what do you think would be different? I guess
Exactly.
is the question. It's like he's the passing game coordinator now.
Right.
So unless you I guess if you think that the only problem with this offense is that when Pete Carmichael is out there deciding what to run next, he's getting it wrong all the time, and Ronald Curry would be getting it right. Like, Ronald Curry is a big piece of this passing game already. Like, the development of this passing game is on his shoulders. Yeah. And, one development of the last few days and the last few Dennis Allen press conferences is his use of like kind of halfway cursing. I think that was funny. Like, he opened his press conference after the game with, he got our ass beat. And then later on, he said, he said something like, if we didn't look at everything, if we pretended it was all an execution, that would be a quote unquote freaking cop out. And then yesterday and Monday in his press conference, he had the quote, we're not going to sit here and act like the sky is falling and the season is over. Do we have to get better? Freaking A, right, we do. We need to do it quickly. I just think that's funny.
Hey, man, when someone drops a freaking A right, you get attention.
But it is funny because I know he was willing to curse in reality. Like Willie Green, the Pelicans coach, doesn't curse. And it's so strange. Like you'll see him go berating or an official and he'll be like, you freaking got it wrong. And it's just like, he just doesn't curse. It's like it's a moral thing for him. He will not do it. DA, like he will. I know he will. But in the press conference, it was like, I'm going to freaking A. I just thought it was funny. But it's the way you lost the last two games makes the scenario the Saints are in right now feel like 0-4. It's not 0-4. They have to get better, right? Like that's the thing on both sides of the ball. They have to be better. I actually thought like they put themselves in decent positions on defense a lot, and they just didn't finish. Like Cam Jordan, he has Baker Mayfield on third down, dead to rights, and he just can't get his hand on him. I'm like, Baker Mayfield's not Lamar Jackson. Like you should be. You're athletic, and like Cam Jordan is more athletic than Baker Mayfield. We couldn't get to him. And those are the things that it's like you can't call a better defensive play to get a free rusher right in Baker's grill. Like. You got to play better. And so, you can change all the coaches you want. If you're not tackling the quarterback when you have a chance, I thought Pete Werner, low key had a really bad game. I think no one's talking about it because I think after the beginning of last season, everyone was like, Pete Werner is fantastic. And he doesn't look confident right now. He's out of position a lot. He's missing tackles. That third down to Rashad White, Isaac Yiadom did the right thing. Isaac Yiadom closed off the sideline knowing that he had Pete Werner with inside leverage. Well, Pete gets too far inside and gets beat. And that's a first down. They scored a touchdown on that drive. That was an 87-yard touchdown drive that they converted 3rd and 8 by checking down in front of two defenders. And there's I said this after the game, and I still believe it. There's no good call for bad football. You got to play better. And so, yeah, I think that's where the Saints are at right now. And I know a lot of people are frustrated and people are going to disagree with it. They're going to be like, get Pete out of here. We've seen it. We've seen it all last year. He's had 16 years to get this right. What is he going to change now? I don't know. It's frustrating, but I think you got to get it done with these guys.
A positive of all this nonsense is the fact that with the offensive line, at least, there was improved play in this game against Tampa Bay than what we saw previously. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, so one of the reasons I was griping about the whole Max Garcia in at right guard and switching James Hurst back to left guard is that Max Garcia got in and struggled. And I did think the protection was a lot better. I actually think there's a question. One of the questions that needs to be asked is, I don't know if Andres Pete's going to be ready to play this week. He's dealing with a concussion. But when Caesar is back and Andres Pete is back, do you sit James Hurst? Because James has been struggling hard. Yeah. We've seen Trevor Penning get better, and I'm going to go through a little bit more on Trevor in the kind of film notes segment. James, he's on the struggle bus, and I like James a lot. I talk to him every week. He's incredibly helpful. He's a smart guy. He knows he's basically a coach on the offensive line. He's not getting it done. And so that's the frustrating thing. It's like week one, it was like, man, if Trevor can just get better, maybe this team could have great protection. And then it's like, no, the pressure's coming on the inside. And that's a death knell for a quarterback who can't, Derek Carr can move, but he's not a mobile quarterback. He's not even as mobile as Baker. He wants to stay in the pocket. And if he's getting right up his grill, he's not going to be able to run offense. That's how the Saints beat the Bucs with Tom Brady, right? Like, anyway.
Yeah, I thought you talk about with the offensive line, James Hurst hasn't been living up to expectations. Uh, but with someone like Ryan Ramczyk, I don't know how he graded out in this game. We'll get more to it, I'm sure, with your film review. But man, that Packers game was definitely not a good showing for Ramczyk, and you definitely don't like to see that at all.
Yeah, Rashawn Gary ate his lunch a little bit. And
Man.
One of the things that had been happening early in the season is Trevor had been struggling so mightily, especially in week 2, that I think in week 3 you saw the Saints have to send help. He needed a tight end, he needed a running back over to his side, which means that you left Ryan Ramczyk out to dry on his own, and Ryan Ramczyk is a very good right tackle. He's not having his best season, and he's getting beat. And so hopefully you get to a point where you trust Trevor a little bit more to hold up on the left side, so you can be a little bit more thoughtful about not putting Ryan in bad positions. But yeah, I thought, that's the thing. Like I talk about the injuries, that's not an excuse because they haven't really been that bad. And the protection in this game was not that bad. And so I think that's the most frustrating thing is like the first 3 games, you're like, oh man, if they could only pass protect, this offense would get going. And then they did pass protect and they did not get going. And maybe Derek Carr's shoulder had something to do with that. Dennis Allen said there was 2 throws in the game that he thinks were directly related to the shoulder. One of them was that short arm ball to Chris Olave. Derek Carr after the game said something that I think confused people. He was being asked by Mike Triplett about those 2 throws, or the 2 throws of one to Chris Olave that was short, and then the next play he threw it 55 yards. And so Tripp was asking him, did you think the shoulder affected you on that first throw? And I think he said no. And then he was like, yeah, but you threw it 55 yards on the next play. And Derek was like, I think I was just angry. And he was saying that, and I think a lot of people took that as I threw the ball to that read because I was angry and I just gave away a down. And what he's saying is he was angry, so that was like his arm strength. When you're mad and you punch a wall, like he had that extra bit of oomph on it because it was just
ticked off, right?
Right. That's what he was saying. I think some people took that as he made a bad decision because he was angry, and that's what he was admitting to. But that's not the context of the question. But either way, there was 2 throws in that game that DA said that was that one to Chris Olave, and there was another one to Mike Thomas over the middle of the field. I'm not entirely sure which throw. He didn't specify, but I think the overall game plan to some extent was a product of wanting to protect that shoulder. You don't throw 17 times at the line of scrimmage, 15 if you don't include the 2 pop passes. Because you're not worried about that shoulder. So
yeah, and then unfortunately for Jameis, he comes in 1 pass, 1 pick, and that's not fair for him.
Yeah. I still don't think he had to make that throw. People,
No.
I said after the game I was bummed out because I was hoping he would come in and like give them something to talk about in terms of like you should have started Jameis, and the first thing he does is throw a pick, but it's like that he doesn't have to throw to his first read. That's the thing. It's like Chris wasn't really open. I mean, there was 2 defenders there. Maybe he runs by him, but like he all you have to do is not throw to Chris and go through your progressions. Which if he looked over and saw Alvin by himself, that would have been a nice little check down, right? Nope. Maybe then Alvin would have had 14 catches for 50 yards. Anyway, it's
one of the puzzling things in this game too, Jeff, was the fact that it seemed with an ailing quarterback in Derek Carr, and all right, you're going to go with him, this would be a heavy Taysom game, and that really wasn't the case.
I disagree.
You think there was? I wanted to see more of Taysom at quarterback.
No, Taysom was in constantly. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, if you're looking at the number of runs, maybe not. Let's see. But I mean, yeah, he had 4 rushes for 10 yards. He threw a pass for 13 yards. He caught a pass for 7 yards. So, but then he also had several plays where he just handed the ball off because it's a read. Now he was in a lot. Like there was one play that, they ran a double reverse kind of play where he took the snap, handed it to Derek Carr, flipped it back to Alvin Kamara, it was a bad decision. But like he got, he was in there. Like there was at one point in the second half, I thought they were using him too much. I thought they were being too formulaic about it. Yeah. Well, so I think it was the first drive that ended in a field goal in the second half because, they were moving the ball. And then for like the third consecutive possession or the third consecutive set of downs, they just put Taysom in on first down and he ended up losing like 4 yards. And it was like, yeah, after a while, they're going to start keying on it. And that's when you stop doing it. It's not when you start doing it. So I actually think I disagree, and he wasn't effective either. Last year against the Bucs, he wasn't effective. They stop it well. They have good linebackers. They're fast.
Definitely.
He had 4 carries for 10 yards, right? Like it's not like the Taysom Hill runs, the Taysom Hill package was like hyper effective. I disagree. I think they used Taysom plenty in this game.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to see more passing attempts from him, and that just wasn't the case.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I wouldn't have minded seeing him throw the ball a couple times more, which is weird to say, but he threw the ball once, and it was a nice little play. So let me see. Let me just look here and see how many snaps Taysom was actually in on.
Yeah.
He was on the field for 33 snaps, 10 special team snaps. That's a lot. I mean, Jimmy Graham was on the field for 43 snaps, so they had the exact same number of snaps. 51%. That's a good number for him. Like Chris Olave was in for 53 snaps. They only ran 65 offensive plays. It's not like they had a huge number of offensive plays. So yeah, I didn't have a problem with that. But I mean, I would have liked to see him be effective.
I should have clarified things more and definitely say Taysom the passer more than anything, I guess. I know, that's weird to say.
No, I mean, because they're I think there's a point where the teams are gearing up to stop them, and they're good at it, and so you want to try to burn them, right? Like even the times they've had him in to throw, they were like just his little dink passes. Like it's like, why is he not like? If you have Taysom in to throw, I want it to be like a potential big play. Otherwise, it's not worth it. So I don't know. Like I don't need Taysom in there to throw a 13-yard out.
Yeah, there's just a lot of, I guess, play calling issues, but it goes into everything. When you're not winning, you're not scoring, you're not moving the chains, there's going to be a ton of question constantly.
Yeah, and in the red zone, I think Pete Carmichael, they had some interesting alignments. They ran some interesting plays in this game. They used some orbit motion with Rashid Shaheed that worked early on. They got the ball out wide to Alvin Kamara. That worked, and that was something that I had a gripe about last year where you weren't doing that enough. They did run some screens. I don't think they ran any screens to Alvin specifically, but they did run some screens. Just a lot of it didn't work. And, you can point to the play calling, which there was play calling issues. But again, it's like, if Adam Prentice catches that pass on 3rd and 9 and you're at midfield, which you should have been, and then all of a sudden you're up 3-0, you're in control. If Adam Prentice doesn't fumble at the goal line, you go into halftime down 7-3 or down 7-6 or up 10-7 if you're finishing that drive off that ended with that drop. So I said this after the game. It's like, man, fullbacks do not get a lot of opportunities to impact games, and yet he still managed to have a massive impact on that game in a very negative way.
I thought it was odd that Dennis Allen mentioned the fact with the play with Prentice that he fumbled. They would have considered doing a quarterback sneak with Carr, and I'm like, I'm not buying that.
No, I think they would have.
Why wouldn't you have Taysom do that then?
I mean, because Taysom doesn't really go under center very often. I mean, we've seen them run it with Taysom and it hasn't worked. Like that's not. Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm okay with a quarterback sneak there. The funny thing is they did run a sneak later in the game with Derek Carr. So clearly it wasn't completely out of the equation. But at the same time, if your alternative was a fullback die, they weren't doing that again. Like if you're not giving the ball back to Adam in that situation. So I don't have a problem with the play call. Like that's the issue is it's his first carry of the season and he's Adam Prentice. But I don't know. It's tough. Either way, like the moral of the story is, Pete Carmichael's not going anywhere. At least not anytime soon. He's going to get a chance to turn this around. As frustrating as that might be to hear, it's the reality. He's going to get a chance to turn this thing around. If he can do it, great. If he can't, then, gear up for a new coaching staff next season, I think. But yeah, I don't know how else to say it.
No, to me right now, I'm really shaky on how I feel about the rest of the season, just because the offense right now is, like I said, it's looking very identical to what we saw last year, and that was with Mr. Above Average Part 2, I guess you would say, Andy Dalton running the show, and things haven't gotten that spark with Derek Carr now under center. So to me, it just comes down to I've got to put it on Carmichael on this. It's for whatever reason, the things aren't gelling. They're not getting efficiently accomplished because of the play caller at this point. I don't know what the solution is.
No, and I mean, he gets blame, but there are a lot of teams in the NFL that are just not playing good football right now. So it's not like the Saints are alone in that.
Sure.
Vikings are 1-3, Panthers are 0-4, Bears are 0-4, Browns are 2-2. Falcons scored 7 points against the Jags, and people are saying they should bench Desmond Ridder, right? I mean, the Patriots are 1-3. That's who the Saints play next week. The Jets are 1-3. The Raiders are 1-3. Like, there's a lot of bad teams in the NFL right now, and so it's to get better. And I think this Saints team is gonna bet that they can do that. It might be a bad bet, but that's how it works.
Yeah, going into things, obviously we had very high expectations, I think, because of the changes this team made and the schedule. And right now, it's like I said, it's kind of looking more of the same from a year ago, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But let's wrap up this segment. We'll come back. We'll get into some film notes. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. You can follow us on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak and at Steve Geller WWL. If you haven't subscribed wherever you get your podcast, please do that. Leave us a rating, leave us a review. If you haven't, if you listen on Apple Podcast, that'd be great. I appreciate it. We got some nice reviews over the last couple weeks, even as everything has fallen apart in the whole positivity land. But hey, we do what we can. But all right, keep it locked on Inside Black and Gold. We will be right back. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. We are going to get into some film notes from this week to matchup programming note. I have gotten angry emails from the powers that be at Audacy, and apparently I am the only people on the planet who is not allowed to break down all 22 film on YouTube. So that is what it is. But if you want to go, look at the film that I'm talking about, I still post it to Twitter. And so if you are listening to this or watching this on YouTube and you'd like to kind of check out some of the clips that I am referring to, a lot of them will be on my Twitter account at Jeff_Nowak. And this particularly for this first person I'm going to talk about, which Trevor Penning, he was a punching bag for week 1 and week 2, and for good reason, right? He allowed 10 pressures, 3 sacks over 2 weeks. He was struggling hard. He wasn't getting out of his stance. He was getting beat with speed. He was getting beat with power. He was too far over his heels, so he was getting driven back. These last 2 weeks, he's taken serious steps forward, and he's been getting some help, right? And it's funny, when you watch the tape and you go back, you can see the help behind him at points. Like there's and Alvin is there ready to pick up a block, but he's not needed. And it's kind of funny because you can see it. He's ready to hedge, but the block is good enough that he's like, okay, I'm just gonna clear out. And that's good to see. He's allowed 3 pressures. He allowed 1 pressure against the Packers, 2 against the Bucks, 0 sacks. Even in against Green Bay when the pressure was significant, and Derek Carr got sacked 3 times in barely 2.5 quarters. He's not one of the culprits for one of those sacks, and so you can see the progress. He's still not perfect. He's still on a learning curve, but the run blocking was always going to be there. He got a 91 grade from PFF in run blocking this week. I think he got like a 78 grade in pass blocking, which I think is a career high for him. So he's improving. He's getting better. And that's all you can hope for a young player in his 5th career start, right? So, I think he really did hold up well, and I have a kind of a montage of some of the good reps on that I posted on Twitter this morning. So if you want to go check that out, I just, for all of the negative things that you can say about this team and the issues on offense and the lack of points and scoring and drive movement, I think that's a really positive sign for this team going forward.
Yeah, like you said, he was easy target to be the punching bag in the beginning, and it wasn't just made out of the blue. It was for good reason, obviously. Tape don't lie, but yeah, I thought you mentioned Penning, being better this game. Just in all, the offensive line seemed to perform a whole lot better. I know there were still obviously some issues, but at least there was an advancement in protection, because things were not we talked about, it looked like Derek Carr or whoever's that quarterback was going to get killed back there.
Yeah, and I mean, like, people ask for adjustments, right? And we can say that Pete has done everything wrong, and there's been a lot of mistakes, whatever. I think one of the adjustments they made in this game was a good one, in that they got the ball out of his hand faster. Now, a lot of these plays were not successful, and the Bucs have one of the fastest linebacking cores in the NFL, and that so you're not able to get the ball in space and get the type of yardage that you might hope for against some other teams. Like, there was a play that Derek Carr checked down to Alvin Kamara, and he caught the ball, he put his foot in the ground to turn, but then Devin White just ate him up. And it was like, yeah, because Devin White's fast, right? Like, he can get there. He's not, Dalvin's not breaking that tackle, especially not this week when he's kind of just getting back into the rhythm of things. But if you go back and you watch those 2 drives that ended in field goals in the second half, it was by running the ball. It was not. They didn't bog down on 3rd and short at the 40-yard line because it was like, shot play time, and instead they just picked up the first down and kept the chains moving. It bogged down in the red zone. One of them we talked about with the Taysom Hill run that probably didn't need to happen because it was a bit too obvious, and lost a couple yards. So you end up in 3rd and 9, and then that's the thing with the Saints offense. If you can stay ahead of the chains, you have a chance to be successful. If you get behind the chains, this has not shown to be an offense that can overcome that. There are things to complain about, and there's just common sense, and that's one of them. Is don't run a play that risks you losing 5 yards on 2nd and 5. Like, it's like, not all plays are going to be successful, right? When we talked about that kind of reverse to Alvin Kamara, where Taysom Hill gave the ball to Derek, and then he put a pop pass to Alvin. And it's like, I don't hate the idea, because you're setting that up throughout the game. You went to it too early. You went to it before setting a precedent. And it's a situation where on 2nd and 5 in the red zone, I don't want to see a play that, if the defense plays it correctly, you risk a 5 to 8 yard loss. Like, it's not like they made a spectacular play, the defense, and it's not like the offense screwed up. You are relying on misdirection way behind the line of scrimmage to succeed. And if it doesn't, which it didn't, you lose 8 yards, and that effectively torpedoes your drive. You're in 3rd and 12. And yeah, those are the type of play calls where it's like, just, I get it. You want to be creative, and you don't want to be formulaic, and you don't want to be bland. But at a certain point, you're out thinking yourself. And that's honestly, it's weird how many different critiques of Pete Carmichael can you have, that he's thinking it, and then he's underthinking it, that they're not prepared, that they're too prepared. But yeah, it's such like the situational decision making is what really stands out, where it's like, I don't hate this idea. I actually think that play call could work in the right circumstances. Not on 2nd and 5 at the 15-yard line or whatever it was. Like, those are the decisions that it's like, you look back on film and you're like, why? What were you trying to accomplish here? Anyway.
Back to what you mentioned with Penning and PFF, what he had it ranking. The offensive line in general, though, our thoughts about, the gradual improvement in this game and what looked to be a better performance, did that shake out according to PFF stats too?
Yeah, I mean, I think the total pressures they allowed were 12 and 39 dropbacks, one sack or 2 sacks, but the second one was just like, near the end of the game, and Derek was holding on to it, trying to make something happen. We talked about this. Like, one thing that is very clear about Derek is he's not gonna just throw the ball away on 3rd and 9 to avoid getting hit, right? Like, he's willing to stand in there and take a hit on 3rd and long if it means like that extra second where you might be able to make something happen downfield. Now, when that's happening on 1st and 2nd down, it's an issue. When it's happening on 3rd down, it's just like, yeah, that's part of doing the job. So like that second sack, I don't have an issue with. A majority of the sacks he's taken have come on third down, and more than half of them have come on 3rd and 9 or longer. But yeah, I mean, I think the Bucs offensive line allowed 11 pressures. So like you're getting closer to league average, right? Like I wouldn't say this is a great offensive line based on the way they played on week 4, but if you play like the way you did in week 4,
Yeah.
you can work with that. You cannot work with the way they played in week 1. You cannot work with the way they played in week 3. I think they were okay in week 2.
Yeah, week 3 to me was definitely the one that my eyes were popping out of my skull. And like I said, seeing Ryan Ramczyk getting abused was not what I needed to see.
Yeah, and I mean, like again, like some of the changes, like running the ball more, getting the ball out quickly, that helps your offensive line, right? Like even if you lose, if the ball's out of the quarterback's hands, you won. Like there's only so much time, and you don't have to win for 3 seconds. You just have to win for a half second. I would like to see the offensive line block better on downfield on screens. One of the gripes in this game was Chris Olave's performance. Not only like just catching balls, which I don't think he had a drop, but just
I think there was one.
The effort was questioned, I think, on the broadcast. And I do think there was a play early in this game where Chris Olave got hit hard on a short pass to the left. And he came like kind of hobbling off the field. I think he got dinged up on that play. I think, when you're trying to play through something and not a major injury, right? It didn't take him out of the game. I think in a game like that where you're not getting the ball and you're feeling something, and that kind of hurts your performance. But my issue is not so much the route running, which is something that I know was questioned. It's the blocking. You got to be better. And that's the frustrating thing. It's like everyone says the wide receivers aren't here to block. And then you watch the film and you're like, man, that play could have worked if Chris Olave didn't get blown up. There was one where they threw it quick in the flat to Alvin Kamara, and you just watch, he runs into Chris Olave's back because Chris Olave is getting drawn. Like he stayed in front of the guy, I guess, but he gets driven back 4 yards. Like, and it's like, you just got to hold your ground. Like, you don't even have to move them. You just can't just plant your feet, dude. And that's the frustrating thing is like if you can only run to one side of the field because that's the side Mike Thomas is on, that then you start to the defense kind of keys on that, right? And that's why everyone's like, well, why is Traquan Smith here? He was good at that. It was something he was good at, right? Like, he's not great at a lot of things, but he was really good at that. And so those are the blocks that are really frustrating because like every week you look and you're just like, man, that was set up, that was the right call. Then didn't hold up on a block, or you held on a block, like for that Taysom Hill run against the Packers. That I think if they get that run, they have a really good chance to win that game because it's just one extended drive away from putting that game away. And so and that's true of the offensive line too when they get out to the edges of the field. So those are things that have been an issue every week, and you see them on film every week.
Looking at the film, just curious your thoughts. Or grade, whatever you want to say, on Brian Brzee. I thought he had another, pretty good outing for this team.
Yeah, Brian's interesting, and he did play well. And he's one of those guys that when he makes a big play, it's a big play, and you see him like, and he's right in the backfield. He's swallowing the running back. It was that play. Honestly, it reminded me of Jadeveon Clowney in the Outback Bowl. When he just like destroyed the Michigan running back, and his helmet flew off, and then that was the only difference is, he wasn't able to hit him hard enough that his helmet popped off like a cork, and then he fumbled. But it was that type of play. He got in the backfield that fast, There was another play he got back through for a sack. I think he had 2 tackles for loss. But that's the thing with defensive tackles. It's like when you're trying to grade their performance, you can't only grade the successful plays.
Right, when they hit home.
Yeah, because like you know, what about that? I mean, they got run on all day, and like the rushing yards for the Bucs aren't as high as you might have thought they would be. But in situations where you needed to hold them to no gain on first down, it was like they always got 4 or 5 yards. They kept themselves in really good down and distance situations because they were able to run successfully. And a lot of times that's the D tackles, right? That's what you're doing, and you got blocked. And Dennis Allen has made a point. He made a point on both his press conference talking about Brian Brzee and on the WWL Coaches Show talking about Brian Brzee. And so here's that clip that we can play right now.
I think some things have been really good, and yet I think there's some things that he has to do better. I think his pad level gets too high. I think he relies on his athleticism a little bit too much, and so I think he's got to improve his pad level. He's got to play with a little bit better fundamentals and technique, and yet there's some athleticism there, particularly when he's on the move, that can create some negative plays.
That's a coach who is trying to do 2 things. One, he's trying to keep this young player grounded so that he's not constantly buying into his own hype of how great he is and not thinking he still has a lot of work to do, which every young player does, regardless of how good they've been. So there's that. And there's also, that's true. Like there's points where you watch it on film and it's like, he's not a great run player right now. And it's part of what he talks about. His pad level gets too high, so he gets taken out of the play and he gets blocked down, and then there's a lane to run through, right? Like he needs to keep his center of gravity low. And that's something that when you and Mike Detillier talks about this, he's got long legs. He's got a high center of gravity. So there will be points where, low man wins, right? And so the guy gets under him and he's not as effective. But the speed is legit. The spin move, the power is legit. And so it's kind of marrying those things, marrying those highlight plays with consistency that he needs to work on. And that's what DA is trying to get to there. So, and you can see it on film. Like you can see when he makes these huge plays and it's like, man, great pick. That kid's a dude. And so he's in a great position to continue to get better and better and better and better. And once he does get that technique down, he's going to be a force. He's going to be an every down force, like an Aaron Donald type interior lineman. But he's still developing, and that's what that's what you're hearing there.
Yeah, and I know that the coach doesn't want to like you said, inflate the rookie's ego too much.
Right.
But I mean, it's hard not to notice him. I guess when there seems to be at least one play a game that Brzee has stood out.
Yeah, you can't teach the stuff he does. Right? That's the thing. It's like, and that's why he's a first round draft pick, because his natural ability is so good and his ceiling is so high that he even still feeling his way out. Like I think Colin Saunders referred to him as a 6'5" Gerber baby. Like what he's saying is, he's still a child. He's still figuring things out, but he's so talented that even as he does that, he's able to make these impact plays. And so you're going to allow him to play through some inconsistencies as a young player because he's that good, because he's that talented, and he's a first-round draft pick. But there are still things to work on. And so, that's, I think that's one of the things that you have to really kind of go back and watch it to identify, because and I don't blame people for this, but you watch the ball. Like that's what you do when you watch a football game. You watch the ball. You're not staring at the interior defensive line and being like, oh, what a great run fit. That's what you do when you go back and watch it, because what happens on the play, but it's like, okay, but why? What did he do? What did he do? And so, this team really likes Brian Brzee. He's just going to keep getting better and better. Yeah,
great to see. I mean, we know that, some of these first round picks the last couple of years haven't panned out too well. Right. And I mean, I know the jury's still out on a guy even like Trevor Penning, but man, we're at least there's the positive aspect there too. We're seeing, small increases in his play. So I'm just hoping with both of these guys, obviously, with the more reps they keep getting, we're gonna see more of that talent that the Saints were hoping to get when they took them in the first round.
Yeah, you can't whiff on first round draft picks. You just can't. And when you do, it really sets you back. Like this defensive line, right? Like it feels like the depth isn't as good as it should be because 2 first round draft picks have really kind of fallen away. And
Yeah.
you're not sure what you're going to get out of Peyton Turner if he's able to get back this year, but Marcus Davenport definitely didn't give you what you thought he would. And he's not giving the Vikings what they thought he would either, to be fair. But speaking of a draft pick, and one guy, so we talked about Paulson Adebo getting back, and I don't think that Isaac Yiadom has played poorly. I think he's actually played very well. I mean, that interception at the goal line was great. He deserved a touchback because
exactly. I was going to say the
hell
same
are they
thing.
doing? Like, so stupid. Like, why is the defense getting punished? Why are the Saints getting punished for making a great play by this inane ruling? Where it's like, why wasn't there a booth review? Maybe it's not reviewable. I actually looked that up to see if maybe it was in a non-reviewable play, but it's tough to identify exactly what reviewable and non-reviewable plays are. Either way, and so I don't think that Isaac Yiadom being on the field has affected the Saints negatively that much. Like, I don't think the drop-off from Paulson Adebo to Isaac Yiadom has been significant. But I do think it is negatively impacting Alontae Taylor. And we saw that in this game. He was playing a little like his head was on fire. I think he's being asked to do a lot. He's being asked to prepare for a lot because in base personnel, he's the outside because you want to keep him on the field. There's no slot corner. So you want to keep Alontae Taylor on the field in some way. When it's Paulson Adebo, you're okay with it. Because Paulson Adebo is your starting outside corner. But it doesn't make sense to have Isaac Yiadom on the outside when Alontae Taylor could also be on the outside. He's still your best slot option. So what that's forcing Alontae to do is I think prepare for too much. It's like he's focusing on all these different things. And I think he's getting a little lost in the game planning. And you can tell he's thinking out there. That big play to Chris Godwin that set up that score that really iced the game. Guess who it was that kind of got lost in coverage? Sorry.
Could have been.
It was Alontae, right? And Demario Davis held on that play, so it's not like even if you stopped it, it would have been a great result. But what happened was Alontae, it looks like he's signaling because they think they're going to drop into zone, and he thinks that Chris Godwin is running an out. So he turns and runs upfield, and then you can see Chris Godwin is actually running a return route. So he's breaking to the outside. It's like the whip route, And so, but Alontae doesn't see it. He's going upfield with the receiver out of the slot. And Chris Godwin just kind of like casually strolls across the middle of the field by himself and catches that ball. And then obviously Chris Godwin is an elite NFL receiver, so he's able to make a play downfield. But I think that's just an example of like, I think he's just trying to do too much. He's got too many responsibilities right now and having to focus on inside responsibilities, on outside responsibilities, and interchanging that in his head is not beneficial to him. I want him to be able to focus on one position. And so, if Paulson Adebo was able to get back, that's the case. And I think that will be helpful to him because he did not have a great game. He has moments. He always flashes. He's a great player. But, those breakdowns can't happen. Like that was like a 60-yard pass play that basically ended the game. So I think it was a third down as well.
And still patiently waiting for that first Alontae Taylor pick.
Yeah.
I keep calling for it every week. Eventually, I'll be right.
Maybe he's cursed. Maybe he'll just never get it. And like again, I like Alontae Taylor a lot. I think he's had a good season. I think he's playing well. But I just think like this setup where you're asking him to do a little too much. Like you're asking him to do more than you're asking Marshawn to do. Marshawn doesn't go inside. Marshawn is an outside cornerback, and he's arguably the best at it in the game. He didn't have his best game, but like he doesn't get asked to go inside. And so, but you are asking Alontae to do both of those things, and that's a lot. When you're trying to figure out like, okay, how does Paulson Adebo returning help this defense? To me, that's the bigger element than replacing Yiadom per se. I honestly think you get to a point where you're better off just having Yiadom be the outside corner and keeping Alontae in the slot. And for whatever reason, they played a lot of base in this game. They started in base, and it became clear very quickly that was not going to work because Zach Bond just cannot cover.
It also seems anybody wishing that the Saints are going to make a punting change, that's not happening. Blake Killigan is now heading to the Arizona Cardinals.
Is he?
Yeah, he got scooped up by someone finally. And man, that's another thing, Jeff. The jury, I guess, is still kind of out on the Saints punting situation. Where, I mean, there's been a few times they've been able to pin them inside the 20, but they don't look right, and they're pretty short. When it comes down to it.
Blake Killigan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they look like they're supposed to look. It's gonna look like that, and like
Right, I know that's what it is.
The rugby style punter, like that's not the issue. The issue isn't the style of the punt. He just doesn't have the leg. Like he doesn't have the boot. Like,
yeah,
I want to see, like, when you're at your own 20 and you're punting, when you're punting from your own end zone, you gotta get it out. Like you gotta get the ball downfield. And that's the thing. That is the biggest difference to me thus far is Lou Hedley is very good at pinning people back, right? And we've seen it so far. Even in that game, he punted 4 times. 3 of them were downed inside the 20. It was at the 12, the 13, and the 8.
Right.
So it's not he's costing you a ton of field position in that way. But it's the punt where it's like you're sending him out there at his own 30 and you're just like, okay, flip the field. We'll cover. Just get it down there. And that's where it's like, you can directionally punt all you want. It's all net. So I guess that's a good thing. But you're never in that position where, there was a play in this game where Rashid Shaheed was like running backwards so he could field the punt over his head. And he actually had a nice return on that. But that's never going to happen with Lou. It's just not the way he kicks. So yeah, I mean, you're not changing. You're going to roll with it. But yeah, it hasn't been great. One thing that Dennis Allen said is it seems like the first punt of the game for him is his worst punt.
I saw that, right? I was like, okay, so he first comes out and shanks one, it seems.
Yeah, which I don't know why that is, but for the head coach to point that out, clearly it's something that they're like that's real. It's not just an imagined thing, because he shanked one against the Panthers. I wouldn't even call it a shank in this one. They just kicked it 36 yards, and it's not a weapon right now. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I know, and a lot of people obviously are like, "Oh, we should have kept Morstead." That was never happening because of contract issues. It wasn't having anything to do with Morstead's ability anymore. It was just the fact they didn't want to pay a punter that much.
Yeah, but why not bring him back?
Well, he's happy in Miami.
Is he? I thought he was on the Jets.
Yeah, maybe with the Jets. I'm sorry.
But you're telling me when he's a free agent in the offseason, you couldn't be like, hey, Thomas, can we just pay you the minimum? You live here anyway,
Right, I was going to say, I know you're just a couple blocks away.
Like, he's still I would argue he's still more effective than Lou. And it's like, so what, like if you were trying to move on from Blake, why wouldn't you just bring in Thomas? I don't know. It's kind of funny to me because I think they would be better off. But I mean, like, he's in his 4th career game. He'll get better, but yeah, I just think the length on the punts is an issue. And like, you would like to see him pinning guys inside the 10, inside the 5. If that's the strength of your game, the 13 is kind of disappointing, right? Because it's not like you're coupling that with an 80-yard punt. You're coupling that with a 36-yard duck.
Yeah, I'm just had to look real quick. Right now, Morstead's averaging 47 yards a punt, 43 net, and he's had 8 inside the 20.
Yeah, and Lou is not that. I think Lou's like net is like 42.
43.1, I think I'm seeing here.
But he's got great hair.
Who's going to win in a fight, Thomas Morstead or Lou Hedley?
I feel like Lou would fight dirty. Yeah, his longest punt is 52. His average is 43.1. 8 inside the 20.
All right,
so I mean, he has, but they punted a lot. He's punted 21 times. So I mean, like, he has done that. Like that he has done reasonably well. Is get the ball inside the 20 and force them to start from their own 10, 13. Typically, you're not going to see 17 play 87-yard drives like you saw in this game, and that's going to be an advantage. But yeah, it's when you are in a bad situation and your punter has a chance to help your defense and get them to at least start from their own 40. And in this case, it seems like they're starting on midfield or better. So yeah.
Yeah, besides defense, I mean, not showing up in this game, we haven't been. I would say special teams and offense have not shown anything where you have that confidence in them going forward right now, and you're hoping to see some kind of spark. But
I disagree with that. I think any special teams outside of the punting has been fine. The coverage has been fine. You haven't surrendered any major returns.
Rupi should have made that game winner in Green Bay. I know it's like,
yeah, but he's made every other kick. So
sure,
I mean,
but that was a game-winning attempt.
Yeah, sure, but I mean, he's a rookie. He needs to it happens. Like that was the gamble you took when you kept on a rookie kicker. He's gonna have to learn in those moments, and that was a learning experience for him. First time I think he's ever kicked in serious wins since getting to the NFL. But otherwise, he's perfect. So. I mean, I'm not going to say it's been a letdown. And then Rashid has a kick return for a touchdown. And there was a point in this game where I felt like he was the only reliable way to move the ball. Like it kind of felt like it's like if they're going to score a touchdown, it's going to be because Rashid brings it back. So I don't know. I think special teams, generally speaking, has been fine. I just think Lou has been a bit of a letdown from what you probably were expecting.
Definitely the case there. And yeah, now, like I said, there's no going back to a Blake Gillikin. He's now on the Arizona Cardinals.
No, but all right. Let's wrap up this segment. We're going to come back. We're going to do a quick look ahead, kind of reset where the Saints are, what they have coming up, Patriots this week, and then what's beyond that. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. Stick around. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. We've been going for a while here. Both of these segments got a lot longer than I anticipated. So this is going to be a quick one. We're going to go through, kind of reset where the Saints are. They're 2-2 right now. Obviously, there's a long way to go. 2-2 kind of feels like, where is not an unreasonable place to be.
And
it's
typically we look at that as the first quarter of the season.
Yeah, effectively. Right now that it's 17, it's
exactly
a little. The percentage points go a little different.
Right.
No, it's more like 23.8% or something like that. But either way, I think it's a good point to kind of look around and see, where is everybody? Who's out to a hot start that you might not have expected? Who is slower out of the blocks than you might have expected, especially the teams that the Saints play. So the first one that we'll look at, is okay. The Saints are 2-2. Again, it's like 2-2 is fine. I don't think 2-2 is the worst place in the world to be. It seems like the Saints are 2-2 every year. It's just the fact that you won your first two games and then lost the next two in such just painful, demoralizing fashion that it feels a lot worse than it is. But you're going out to New England this week. You don't have to play in any weather, so you're okay with that. This is a Patriots team that is 1-3, has been outscored by 42 points on the season, but you look at the teams they've played, and it's like, okay, that's a little tough to gauge how good they actually are, because they lost week 1 to the Eagles, 25-20. They lost week 2 to the Dolphins, 24-17. A team that got blown up by the Bills. I don't know, whatever. Then they beat the Jets 15-10. And then last week, they lost 38-3 to the Cowboys, another team that it's like, I can't figure out.
15-10, that might be a Saints New England score.
That's going to be, I have a feeling that's going to be the type of game that the Saints want. But I mean, you look at the Patriots, the last 2 weeks, they're 1-1. They've scored 18 total points. So like, this is not an offense that's blowing anyone away. They haven't scored over 20 points this year. But they have lost to good teams. But the Cardinals also beat the Cowboys, and the Giants beat the Cardinals, but lost to the Cowboys 40-0 on the opening night. So the transitive property is a lie. Either way, I think it's this the Saints and Patriots matchup is going to be kind of fascinating because I think it's two teams that believe they are better than their record indicates, fighting for one of them to be accurate, and one of them to be right, and one of them to be wrong.
Yeah, the big one, you look at it, when you look at scoring, defensively, to me, it comes to the turnover margin here where the Saints are even and the Patriots are -5. That's awful already this season.
I mean, the Patriots have been outscored by 42 points. Let's see. Only the Broncos, who lost a game by 50 points. Bengals, which is crazy, another 1-3 team. And
some folks are calling the bench Joe Burrow because of his calf injury.
Right. Giants and Bears. Those are the only teams that have a worse point differential than the Patriots. And so that's the group that the Patriots are with. Is like the Cardinals have a better point differential than the Patriots. The Panthers have a better point differential than the Patriots. The Panthers haven't even won a game. The Bears are the worst team in the history of time, it seems. They can't even beat the Broncos, a team that lost to the Dolphins by 50. And so they're -6. They're -62. The Giants, God, it's really offensive to me that the two games that I make sure to try to watch when I can are obviously the Saints, because it's my job and I'm watching them, and I'd be watching them either way, but I don't have a choice. I'm watching those games. And then it's like, oh, great, the Giants are on Monday night, and I grew up a Giants fan, so when I can, I try to watch it, right? I wouldn't say that I'm the best Giants fan in the world, but if I'm rooting for a team that's not the Saints, I'm rooting for the Giants, because that's, I can go to a bar and drink and be like, yay. No, feels like a punishment.
No yay. Right.
It feels like a chore. I'm like, oh man, I gotta go watch this. They have been outscored by 76 points on the season.
Yeah, the Giants look like a hot mess right now too. But yeah, the offensive line was
another team the Saints play. So I mean, we look at that early in the season and say, the Giants, they should be competitive. They were a playoff team last year. Well, what are they going to look like in Week 15? Because if it's anything like they look like right now, suddenly that's like a chalk it up matchup.
Yeah, another one too, like you mentioned too, the hapless Bears. I mean, come on. Looking at the expectations of Justin Fields going into this year, we were kind of like, man, he might give us some problems in the Superdome come that matchup.
The Bears are currently on pace to have the number 1 and number 2 overall picks in the draft. One of them is theirs, and one of them is the Panthers. People gave the Saints a lot of grief for the pick they gave away last year.
Right,
at least that was the number 10. If you end up giving the number 2 pick away, you traded up. Like they're in position to potentially get the number 1 pick again. You traded up for that and gave away what might be a top 3 pick for Bryce Young, who, granted, I think he's going to be good, but he's not better than, I don't think he's a better prospect than Caleb Williams.
Right.
So, I don't know. It's just kind of like trading, going and getting that guy at the top of the draft is not as simple as it sounds. And the Panthers are better than that 0-4 record probably indicates, and I think they'll win a couple games because they have no incentive to tank. But yeah, the Panthers are that's rough. Anyway,
yeah, where the Panthers, situation with Bryce kind of, looks still very questionable. At least Houston with CJ Stroud, he seems to be that dude right now.
I mean, I don't know what the heck I'm talking about, but I do feel like I have a pretty good indicator when it comes to the draft. I'm pretty good at the draft. When I make a pick or an idea, I have a good reason for it. And I was pretty confident the whole way through. I was like, I think CJ Stroud is the best quarterback in this draft. And for some reason, it's like, nope, Bryce Young. We want the 5'10" guy.
Okay, right.
I don't get it. Like, sure, maybe the processing speed and the, his Wonderlic score or whatever, they do the interviews. I've never spoken to Bryce Young actually I did once. I interviewed him at the Manning Passing Academy once, but I don't know what his processing speed is on the field and whatnot. Maybe it's so much better than CJ Stroud's that you can overlook the obvious physical limitations that being 5'10" in the NFL is going to give you. But I mean, I don't know what CJ Stroud did to get for Bryce Young to be the clear first round number 1 overall pick. But yeah, CJ Stroud has looked good. I think D'Amico Ryans has done a good job with that team. And so, yeah, like that's suddenly, you probably looked in the beginning of the season and been like, man, okay, so the Saints get the Texans. That should be chalk it up for a win.
Right. Now rookie head coach, rookie quarterback.
Yeah. Young receivers, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. Like this is a team that, it's funny. I have CJ Stroud in fantasy. And he got the exact same point total. He got 23.27 points in weeks 3 and 4.
That's solid production right there.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a 62% completion, 1,212 yards, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions.
Wow.
He's been sacked 11 times. And they haven't run the ball particularly well. Damian Pierce is averaging 2.8 yards a carry through 4 games.
I know he's on my fantasy team.
I mean, he is their leading rusher, but not efficiently. Tank Dell, has been good. 16 catches, 267 yards, 2 touchdowns. Nico Collins is the star of that team, apparently. 22 catches, 428 yards. I mean, we saw CJ Stroud in the preseason. He led a scoring drive. He's still a rookie, though, and I think the Saints should still feel good about that matchup. But yeah, it's that the Texans are suddenly a team that you look at like, oh, well, I guess that's not an easy win after all.
Right, and we were, looking at the next game after the Texans, we were all worried. Oh, the best quarterback on the schedule, Trevor Lawrence, who's been this season. Nothing fantastic.
Yeah. I still think he's the best quarterback on the schedule.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, I'm just saying we haven't really seen that explosion of a game from him.
Let's see. What is he looking at? 96 completions, 67% completion, 943 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Yeah, I mean, nothing to write home about. But the team is 2-2. They're first in their division. So, I mean, it's a thing. I mean, like they manhandled the Falcons in London.
Yeah, that was fun to see at least.
Yeah, I watched it in Toy Story mode.
So you got to see the yard marker with the dachshund dog.
Slinky dog.
Yeah.
I didn't. I actually didn't watch that game. I didn't because I was sitting next to you on the pregame show.
We did get to see highlights though on social media, so I figured you meant that.
Yeah. I mean, keep going down the list. Chicago, we talked about. Minnesota, 1-3.
Come on, right?
I mean, who knows who their quarterback is by the time the Saints get them in Week 10, right? Like, do they trade Kirk Cousins? I think it's a possibility.
I mean, I don't know what then you do with what do you say to a Justin Jefferson with that when you make that move?
And we're gonna go get you a better quarterback, and we're gonna pay you. Yeah, I don't know, but they don't have a running back. They don't have a quarterback. I mean, the thing is, like, Kirk Cousins' stats aren't terrible,
right? And I think, what was it? The last game he had a pretty good outing and still suffered the loss.
68%. No, they beat the Panthers. 68%, 1,214 yards, 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions.
Oh, it was the Chargers game. I'm sorry. It was the one before that. He had a decent outing.
Yeah. I mean, like, statistically, he's always been solid. Like, he's never been a terrible statistical quarterback. Just, again, it's just average. But average can win you games for, I don't know, the Jets. If you're the Jets, wouldn't he make a whole lot of sense? Although it is tough. We always say, like, oh, what if a quarterback gets traded? But quarterbacks almost never get traded because it's so difficult to pick up an offense in season. But yeah, so that's going to be one. Who knows where they're at?
It'd be so. I guess if you're making that, you want to make that push to the playoff kind of thing. I don't know how you justify trading for Cousins when you know you got Rodgers coming back next year.
Because I think Cousins is on a 1-year deal.
Oh, okay. He's heading into his contract season. I got you.
Yeah, he's in the final year. This is the final guaranteed year of his contract. So if you're the Jets and you just don't want to waste this season, and you're like, we can take the hit. What do you guys want? I'll give you a 4th-round pick, right? And that'll give you an opportunity to start. Let's see who Trade him Zach Wilson, right?
Yeah,
or
right, exactly. His stock's high now after last game.
who is the backup on the Vikings? I don't even know.
Ooh, that's
Nick
a
Mullins.
great question.
Jimmy and Gretna will be three.
Jimmy and Gretna's favorite. Shout out
Big
to
Southern
Jimmy.
Miss fan. But yeah, so I don't know. That's going to be one to watch to see how. Like a lot of these teams are going to be interesting to watch. Anthony Richardson has been solid.
Man,
I don't think
I'm way
I still
impressed.
don't think Anthony Richardson is that good. I don't know. Like
I will say he's been more accurate than I thought he would be, though.
yeah. I mean, he's fine. I don't.
He's
know.
already suffered a concussion.
Yeah, the way he plays is going to be tough to maintain.
Exactly.
But we'll see. I mean, the Saints get him in a couple weeks, and that's a game they need to win. They got to win that game. If they don't win these games against rookies, then we talk about 10 wins. I don't know if you can get to 10 wins from here without taking advantage of the rookie quarterbacks on your schedule. So that's Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young again, and I consider Desmond Ridder to be a rookie quarterback.
Fair enough. They're right.
That's 5 games, right? So you get the Texans in 2 weeks, the Colts in 4 weeks, then you get the Falcons coming off of a bye. Then 2 weeks later, you get the Panthers, and then you get Atlanta to close out the season.
Right.
Of those 5 games, you have to win 4 of them to get, in my opinion, to get to 10 wins and win the division. Because I think the Bucs are going to put up a number in the division race that is competitive. Like I don't know if they get to 10 wins, but I think 10 wins gets you the wild card. And it at least gets you in a position where you could potentially win the division. So to me, you got to win 4 of those 5 games. And then, you got teams like the Giants, the Rams, you should be favored in that game. The Bears, you should be favored in that game. The Patriots this week, so there's wins on this schedule.
Yeah, the toughest matchup might be Detroit, huh?
I was just about to say that. The team that I think they're going to lose to is the Lions.
Man, they are stout up front.
That team, the speed of which they turned it around. I think they started, 0-7 last year? Something like that? Let's see. I can't remember.
I don't know if you've seen this one across social media. Folks asking, is Dan Campbell the coach that got away from the Saints?
They started 1-6. Then they won 8 of their final 10 games.
Yeah.
So and now suddenly it's like, I don't know if they're one of the top 3 teams in the NFL. And anytime you see a team in today's NFL that can run the ball at will, they become very, very difficult to stop.
For sure.
Because it just allows Jared Goff, a guy who I don't think is a star quarterback, but he can get it done. Like he has the talent, like he has the ability. I don't want him to have to put the team on his shoulders. But like a Kirk Cousins, right? Like if you put a team around him that is complementary, has a good defense, can run, probably the best offensive line in football, you're going to win a lot of games. It kind of reminds me of the Cowboys early in Dak's career, where Zeke was going off. The offensive line was fantastic. You had pass catchers who were, Des Bryant, guys who you could trust. They feel like that. And I don't think that's the type of team the Saints are going to beat this year. Plus, Aaron Glenn knows the Saints very well. Dan Campbell knows the Saints very well. Pete Carmichael is going to have very few secrets for that matchup. So yeah, that's one I'm going to chalk up as a loss. Buffalo. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's the wrong schedule. Hold on.
I was like, wait a minute, we don't get the Bills.
But that's the thing. I think you have put some good teams behind you in the Packers, the Bucs, apparently the Titans. So between New England, Houston, Indianapolis, Chicago, Minnesota, Atlanta, Carolina, New York, the Giants, the Rams, and the Falcons, the Saints should be, if not favored, even on the betting line in those games. Like I think that they should believe they should win those games.
Yeah, talking about the Lions, they get the Bucs this week in Detroit, so hopefully go Lions right there.
It'll be interesting to see if they make the Saints look as bad as they did when they beat up on the Packers 4 days after the Saints blew the lead in the same stadium. The games that I'm chalking up as a loss.
Okay.
Jacksonville, Detroit. Those are the 2 losses that I see definite on this schedule. I mean, they can win those games, but like if I'm chalking them up as, they would be gravy wins. Like if you get wins in those games, it's huge. But I think you don't have to win those games to get to the postseason, and those are going to be games that you are not favored in. The games that are going to be close, Tampa Bay, in terms of like, I think the Saints and Bucks are a lot closer than they looked in week 4.
Agreed.
Tampa Bay, Minnesota,
At the Rams? I mean, depending on, I don't know what's going to be up with Stafford.
Only because it's a Thursday night game in LA.
Right.
So
That's definitely a big part of that.
On a short week, you have to go across the country and play in a stadium that I hate. I've only been there once. I don't like it. Although I do like the snacks. The snack game is on point. But
overall, the stadium gets a negative grade from you, huh?
Yeah.
It
rains
because
inside.
I was going to say just because it's open kind of thing, and when it should be, it's a stupid roof
No,
on
it's fine. It's fine. It's just I don't know. Like it's like it was made to look nice,
sure,
but
right?
not necessarily be nice. It's anyway.
Kudos to the snacks. We'll give them props on that.
They spare no expense. Anyway, so yeah. I mean, so you're 2-2. Just the math is not that complicated to get to 10-7. You need to win 8 of your final 14 games. So you need to go 8-6 the rest of the way to get to 10.
Not asking world-beating statistics here.
I'm sorry. I said it was easy, and I still did the math wrong. We played 4 games, so there's 13 games left.
Yeah.
So you need to win. You need to go 8-5 the rest of the way to get to 10 wins.
Double digits, right?
And that's 5 losses. That's not exactly, an exciting thing to think they're going to lose 5 more games this season. But you can lose 5 games and still get the double-digit win. So if you just lose the games that you probably won't be favored in. So let's see. Say you lose at Minnesota. It's going to be tough to go to Minnesota and win. Say you lose versus Detroit. Say you go on the road and lose to the Rams on a short week. That's 3. Lose to Jacksonville. That's 4. I mean, I have a hard time.
Atlanta?
Yeah. Say you drop one of the games to Atlanta. That would mean you beat Atlanta once, you beat Tampa Bay once, you beat the Giants
twice.
You beat the Panthers again. You beat the Bears, you beat the Colts, you beat the Texans, you beat the Patriots. You're at 10 wins.
Right, and the toughest out of that matchup, I think, obviously going to Indianapolis, going to Houston. Luckily, the at Houston one isn't a very long trip, but anytime you play on the road, obviously in the league, it's tough.
See, I don't know, because it seems like the Saints play better on the road than they do at home, because they have lost 11 of their last 17 games at home.
Right.
So maybe being on the road for those games, like I think it's a blessing that they're going out to New England this week. If they had to play again at home, man. All right, I think that's it. I think we've put in our time here. We, a full 90 minutes, basically, not quite, but close.
Look forward to what's going to happen now with the injury report, obviously coming out on Wednesday, to see just exactly where this team stands, and not expecting any changes at quarterback, obviously. So the Derek Carr show continues.
The Darren Sharper show. No.
We don't do that one. That was canceled a long time ago.
Yeah, for good reason. Yeah, we don't want that. The reruns don't even get aired. Except for that one video. You know what I'm talking about? The Greg Jennings video? He puts the team on his back.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
He puts the team on his back. All right. Let's find it. I can't believe you've never seen this video.
It's Darren Sharper?
It kind of.
Okay.
That's why I say I'm one of the hardest in Madden. I have one of the most best offense in Madden history. Look at this shit. Look at that. Greg Genius caught that shit. It's probably the last play of the game. But dog, earlier though, broke his leg. How is he running with a broken leg? Look at this nigga holding this shit though. Dog, he put the team on his back. Dog, let's go inside the mind of a Greg Jennings. Dog, I gotta do this shit. I put the team on my back though. My leg broke. I don't know how the fuck I'm running right now though. I'll do this shit for Madden. Oh shit. Darren Sharper, one of the most hardest hitting safeties in the league. But I put the team on my back, dude. You can't stop me. Cross the plane. Touchdown. Greg Jennings.
No, that was a first for me right there.
Yeah, it's one of like the earliest like viral videos. Let's see, when was it? Yeah, 13 years ago. It's got 17 million views. Anyway, yeah, and it's funny because it's against the Saints in the game.
Yeah,
Darren Sharper, the hardest hitting safety in the NFL.
Greg Jennings running with a broken leg. You don't give a damn.
He put the team on his back though.
Kind of like the Leroy Jenkins whole thing.
Yeah, it's similar to that. It's a very
right.
around the same time.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, it's that like early YouTube where it didn't even have like an algorithm of any kind. It was just like you've had to like it was all manually shared content.
Interesting.
Good stuff. I'm probably gonna have to cut that out of the podcast because it's very salty language. Either that or bleep everything, which seems like a lot.
Oh, I thought the Audacy folks would be mad at you for playing the YouTube video. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's copyrighted, but we'll see. I'm sure. Yeah. How dare you play 13-year-old Madden clips? All right. Let's wrap up this here podcast. It's about 90 minutes of sheer gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. You can follow him at Steve Geller WWL. You can follow the show at Saints_pod. Check out the latest Saints content, news, and analysis over at WWL.com. Listen to Sports Talk every day, 4 to 8 p.m. on WWL AM 870 FM 105.3 and on the always free Audacy app. If you haven't subscribed yet, do that wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts and you haven't left a rating or a review, do that. We appreciate it. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you'd like to see. Tell us who you'd like to stop talking. And we'll do our best to oblige. But as always, thanks everyone for listening. Saints are 2-2, not 0-17. So we're gonna keep watching and hoping and seeing what happens. It's the Pete Carmichael show, baby. Let's do it. All right. How you doing, Steve? You ready to go?
Cheers to getting to 3-2. We'll be talking some Pats the next podcast, I'm sure.
Who dat? Go Saints. Peace out, y'all.
Who dat?